A U.S. appeals court ruled on Thursday that former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores can proceed with a discrimination lawsuit against the NFL and Broncos, Giants, and Texans in court, not through arbitration. The court found insurmountable flaws with the arbitration process that would mean Commissioner Roger Goodell would serve as the arbiter in the case. Flores sued the NFL and several teams in 2022, saying the league was rife with racism, particularly in its hiring and promotion of black coaches. Flores is now the Vikings defensive coordinator. His attorney, Brian Flores' attorney, had this to say: "The significance of the second court's decision cannot be overstated. For too long, the NFL has relied on a fundamentally biased and unfair arbitration process, even in cases involving serious claims of discrimination. This ruling sends a clear message. That practice must end." This is a victory not only for NFL employees, but for workers across the country and for anyone who believes in transparency, accountability, and justice. All right, obviously, a lot to get through there on that topic. And Mina, you're giving us a fresh voice in this conversation. Just what is your biggest takeaway from this ruling?
This is a big deal. So I think it's always worth reminding folks sort of the substance of the accusation here. The core of what Flores is alleging is that the league or specific teams violated the spirit of the Rooney Rule, which requires them to interview non-white head coaching candidates for open positions. During the process, when he was being interviewed by teams like the Giants, he infamously now received a text from Bill Belichick congratulating him. He thought it was Brian Flores. Essentially, Brian Flores is saying, Coach Dable, pardon me, not him, got the job already. So it was a sham interview. Okay. I have talked to black executives, head coaches across the league about this topic for years, and the conclusion I have come to is an overwhelming number of them believe these sham interviews are rife, that it's been happening for a long time. So for this case to proceed, for there to potentially be, discovery and information coming out, you run the risk, from the NFL's perspective, of more names, more details being outed. This is honestly a pretty serious thing for them. And so for his case to continue, it's a big win for him. And it continues, I think, exposing what's been going on, potentially exposing what's been going on in the NFL for quite some time.
A couple of big points that need to be made. Number one, Brian Flores has had about 5 or 6 interviews since departing as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, okay? He has yet to get a head coaching job, and we all know him to be an elite football mind who is deserving of a head coaching job. You also have to take into account the fact that there's 5 black head coaches in the National Football League right now. Mike Tomlin with the Steelers, Todd Bowles with the Buccaneers, D'Amico Ryans with the Texans, Raheem Morris with the Falcons, and Aaron Glenn. There were 7 openings this offseason. Aaron, courtesy of Mike T, consulting with the New York Jets, the AKA 33rd team per se. They ended up hiring an African-American. Nobody else did. That's number 3. Number 4, those head coach openings that existed this offseason: Chicago Bears, Jacksonville Jaguars, Raiders, New England Patriots, New Orleans Saints, the Jets, and the Cowboys, okay? We get all of that. Here's the big thing about this story. Big thing about this story is that the NFL is going to be wise to settle. Because what the courts are saying is, we're not going to allow you, as a league office, to hand down punishments or to hand down any level of restrictions, but then you get to arbitrate an appeal or the appeals process that is brought forth. That doesn't work. That doesn't make any sense. That's what they're saying. In the NFL, one would argue, has been getting away with that for quite some time. Now, the league does a lot of good for a lot of players, and we all know that. We're not here to castigate or, them in any way, but the point is the courts are saying things need to change.
Yeah.
What we need to monitor, Mina, Woody, Eminem, is the climate itself. The league owners won't admit it, but they're petrified of President Donald Trump. Absolutely petrified of him. Why is that relevant in all of this? Because of the Rooney Rule. When you got DEI and all of that stuff that they've addressed and attacked, when you've got them looking at institutions like the Smithsonian Institute and other things and wanting to change stuff that has transpired. This administration, I brought this up with the Caitlin Clark thing last week. Anything that they could decide that he believes to be politically expedient for him, he will address. And sports is the easiest thing for him to do because he has always been involved in sports. hosting boxing matches, former USFL owner, aspiring NFL owner, goes to the Super Bowl, goes to basketball games. These are all things he did before he ever ran for president. And so when you got the Rooney Rule now being something that Brian Flores has brought up that hasn't been honored, it is entirely possible that you have politicians who might try to infiltrate the proceedings just to make their presence known. NFL doesn't want that. Even if they agree with the decision, they don't want that. They don't want that kind of involvement. The longer this drags on, the longer the potential is there for outsiders, Mina and Woody, to somehow get involved in something we would otherwise surmise they shouldn't be involved in, and then everything goes up in haywire. That's what you got to watch out for with stuff like this. Mark my word. And by the way, because you see what I'm doing when I'm away from sports, I'm not asking, and I'm not guessing. I'm telling you what's very, very possible. Y'all figure out how I use that. Go ahead.
Listen, I think that when you look at this whole situation, the Second Circuit just blew up the NFL's, way of going about doing things because the NFL has been judge, jury, and executioner, and so the judicial system's like, oh no, it's enough of that. Okay, now we're getting to a point where sensitive information by the NFL could be put on Front Street. Exposed email. We talk about John Gruden, right? We talk about John Gruden in the emails. Could you imagine sensitive emails as it relates to the Rooney Rule and hiring processes and what owners or high executives may have said in other emails? Do you think the NFL wants that type of information to get out? And so, Stephen, I agree exactly what you're talking about. The NFL better settle this thing. Because the longer this thing is out there, there's a possibility for sensitive information to come about, especially if this thing goes to trial, move forward to trial.
And that's just one element. The other element is that you're the NFL, you're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. You don't want intervention or interference there, I say. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mina. You don't want interference from outsiders. You want to do your thing, and you want to handle things internally. You don't want, even if the administration agrees with the NFL, you're the NFL, you don't want them involved. You don't want that problem. The longer this drags out, the more room there is for people who have no business being involved to get involved, which should be incentive for you to handle this quietly and quickly.
Okay, I got a question, but Mina, I want you to get back in here. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, you both make a lot of good points about, I think, the NFL's intentions, the optics, the outside world perhaps infringing upon their actions here. And I'll just say this for folks. This is not about whether